you know what? Sometimes it's good to have a little shake up because then you can totally let go and relax and not, try to control so much, right? So,
I
welcome
need
back.
that, brother. Take
Welcome
two.
back, Rebecca Tolin. This is awesome. So yeah, we had some issues with going live. So we're now on Zoom, which is great. So I'm having you back on because we had a great conversation last time, and it was, there's only so much that we can fit in, an hour or whatever. So we thought we got to keep this going, and we won't try to squeeze too much in. Um, I'm sure we could, but I figured, we get like a burst of stuff here so that people have something to chew on and savor, and then, you know, next time you come on, we can hit them with something else.
I love it because we kind of got into the recovery story and just the very foundational stuff, but then there's so many nuances to this work
Yeah.
because it can click with people, they believe it, but then they go out and live their life. It's like, oh wait, but this doesn't apply to me, or how do I do that? So we're going to get
Yeah.
into some of the thoughts, the behaviors, the resistance versus allowing, and we'll just kind of
Yeah.
see what else comes up today.
So I got a bit of a list. Um, yeah, from what I remember is the approach that I did in the beginning was I started doing the, neuroplasticity brain retraining route. And it was a lot of stop, 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 a lot of redirecting, distraction, what you resist persists, a lot of, doing this. And that just created more, alarms for me, bigger alarms. They just started getting bigger and bigger. In the beginning, it was working great because I started healing physically, and it was working good, and then eventually all my alarms shifted from my body to my mind. So I had a lot of mental alarms, and I didn't know what to do. I was kind of, and the programs that I was in at the time, they're avoiding the OCD elephant in the room. So it was something where I had to kind of shift, and everything kind of happened in perfect timing. I would be struggling for a couple of weeks, you know um with the looping OCD thoughts. And and then I'd see Simona. She posted something on the DNRS forums talking about her approaches were a little different. So I reached out to her, and then she told me, "Yeah, I'm dealing with the exact same thing you're dealing with, but instead of resisting it, instead of making deals with my thoughts, or making, if you had a certain what if thought, you're going, well, what is the opposite of that, so that I can, deal with it or figure it out." I just sat with it and I allowed it to do its thing. And that took away some of the energy, and you're acknowledging the alarm. So it kind of made sense. So then I, trial and error, made mistakes, uh, became my own guinea pig, experimented, and I tried the dare response. I tried different methods, Claire Weeks, her methods, and trial and error and finding the path, and it seemed to it worked. Everything clicked, everything made sense all of a sudden, right? And it's
Wow.
almost like I didn't need a program anymore. I could kind of figure it out on my own, right? Because when things make sense,
Yeah,
you get it. You
exactly.
answer your own question, you become your own guide. It's interesting.
Well, exactly. See, to me, what you're describing, Helmut, that's true healing because you were able to start to tune into yourself, notice the different reactions your brain and nervous system was having to the input, like saying stop versus I'm just going to accept this. And then you were able to adapt to what you need. And that to me, like a part of real healing is attunement, where we can learn to attune to ourself, listen to ourself, learn the language of our nervous system, and then we just can take that with us in our recovery and in every area of life. And another thing I want to say about what you're describing is I actually think this whole idea of accepting and allowing versus fighting and resisting is timeless wisdom of the ages. If you actually
Yeah.
look in spiritual traditions, religious traditions, philosophy, poetry, science, so many different disciplines, when you go to the essence of them, there is this allowing, there is working with reality instead of fighting reality, right? Because when we fight, we're always going to lose. And that doesn't mean we have to say, yeah, we want it to always be this way. No, but it's like, this is what is right now. My brain and nervous system think I'm running from the liger. They're doing everything they can to protect me. I can say, no, you're wrong. Or I can say, oh, no, I believe in millions of years of evolution.
Yeah.
And I'm going to see if I can listen, allow, and maybe guide you a different direction to safety.
And you know what? I think it's like a universal spiritual consciousness, universal law that, I talked about this with Jim, and he said, I think you're onto something with. I think it is a law. It's like a universal law. We use
Yes,
it not just for healing our physical body, but I think it's a great training area, right? Because in able to get to
exactly.
the to consciousness, this is your cock blocking gate, right? If you figure this out, you're training, right? The
Oh,
laws
yeah.
of reality and the other side, when you learn these methods, you can apply them to relationships, to creating your own reality, tapping into consciousness, everything on this 3D world that we live in. It's
Exactly.
like transferable, right?
It's
Everywhere.
so exciting. That's why I love this work. And I say, like, all side effects are beneficial because we're not fighting something, we're not disliking something within ourselves, we're not trying to suppress it. We're actually becoming more aware, more awake, more present, right? And that's mindfulness. And that
Yeah.
was that was really part of my healing path from 13 years of ME/CFS, interstitial
Hmm.
cystitis, migraines, digestive issues, insomnia, and more. Was it's like, oh, I am suffering. This is what I'm experiencing. For one thing, turn towards the emotional instead of just fixating on the physical symptoms. What am I feeling emotionally, which is discouraged, frustrated, sad, all sorts of different things, and really learn to just kind of be with those sensations and emotions within myself. And I also did a lot of somatic work, which is another form of allowing, right? It's
Right.
not just being in our head and saying no, it's saying, no, this is a process happening in my mind and my body. How can I be present and get very curious about why this is happening and what it's trying to
Right.
tell me?
That's what I also meant. Like the allowing for me is pretty much the same thing. It's I'm sitting in it, but I'm also getting to know it, especially in the beginning when you have a new symptom pop up. It's like, okay, we got to go through the first couple of failures and freakouts, and let's get them out of the way. So let's have them, experience them, get to know the symptom, get to you don't like it, obviously. This is scary. Why is my right side of my body going weak? Why was my speech slurring, right? So you catastrophize, but experience it, because when it goes away and it comes back another 10 times, you really get to know it. And when
Mhm.
you get to know it, you become indifferent to it. Because I think that's the goal. Get to know your symptoms so you become indifferent. And then when you get to the point where when it does return, you're almost getting reassurance because, oh, you're coming back. My right side weakness is coming back. I don't mind it because I know you're gonna F off because you and me are like this now, right? Because I know every little nook and cranny about you, and I'm not scared anymore because I've trained to expose myself to indifference.
Exactly. That actually reminds me of this quote by a psychologist. I think it was Carl Rogers who said, something like, the curious paradox is when I accept myself as I am, then I can change.
Right.
So it's like you have to accept yourself as you are and the state that you're in. And then there's different paths. And you and I think took some similar ones. For me, I really discovered this whole TMS body of work, Sarno's approach, Howard Schubner's approach, and everything we're learning about mind body symptoms. And really, that whole approach is grounded in understanding that the symptoms are safe. They are not an accurate reflection of danger. They're actually communicating that a part of our subconscious brain is scared, and typically it's a misperception of danger because it can perceive either physical or emotional events in our lives as dangerous. But it's understanding that these symptoms are very real, they are very physical, but they're created by a primitive part of our brain that is stuck in this threat physiology. And then when we realize that and we don't fear them, we can become more curious about them. And what are these underlying stressors, this perfect storm that led to this state? Um, and what do I really need to unwind from it? And that's a little bit different for each person. And that's where I think that attunement you're talking about, that you started just paying attention and seeing what worked for you, is
Yeah.
really important.
Yeah. It brings that's why I say it's a gift, because you're forced, because of the fear, right? You're forced, it puts a fire in your ass. You're forced to um, do the work because you have no choice, right? You're forced to feel this chaos, right?
Yeah,
So I'm doing the work. I have this is my chaos. I have nothing, no other things. I got to do it.
yeah,
So then you find things about yourself. You find out how this machine works, and it works like clockwork almost,
yeah,
right? It's like, wow, if I do this, but and if you've done it so many times, it's like training. It's like becoming a apprentice plumber, right? And we're
yeah.
becoming like Zen master, ascenders of the mind, body, brain by going through the bullshit over and over and over again and making a full recovery on things that by just one thing, anxiety. You people go Google anxiety or ulcerative colitis or chronic fatigue syndrome. They say there's no cures. They don't know, there's no, you're going up a mountain of a lava in flip-flops. You're going against a lot of resistance and information out there. But let alone 70 symptoms, overcoming that's like major training. And you're gonna tap into things. You're gonna learn some shit about reality. And it does transfer into the spiritual side. And it's powerful stuff. That's why I say this is a gift, majorly.
Yes, I so relate to that on so many levels. And it's interesting because, you know, my breakthrough with my health actually came through a real spiritual shift that I had because none of the medical stuff I was doing, the naturopaths, the functional medicine, all that, the all the specialists, 50 different practitioners, none of that was working. So I just started doing a lot more meditation. I was doing gentle yoga. I was spending time in nature. I was listening to Eckhart Tolle. And actually, he's one of the only voices I could listen to. Everything else would just wig out my brain and nervous system. It was so like overstimulated easily by just about anything. And I would listen to Eckhart Tolle, and I really felt like this is after about 12, 13 years at this point, that I was just coming into the present moment in this whole new way. And I stopped fighting the sensations in my body, and I actually started experiencing them more as sensations, not as like concepts. I could feel them in my body, but I stopped fighting them. And I would almost feel them like, maybe burning going through I could feel all this kind of burning in my brain and my limbs. And I would look out in nature and see the sun or see fire, and I kind of felt like I was part of the elements and part of nature. And I just started shifting into this surrendered state.
Yeah.
And from that state, it was very interesting because I was experiencing so many symptoms still. Like they didn't go
Yeah.
away with that, but I actually was at mental and emotional peace, and I felt like I was just part of something much greater. I've always been a more spiritually inclined person, but then for so many years, I was very worldly. I was a TV news reporter. That just got put to the back burner. And I started really tapping into that a lot more. And in my meditations, I would have sometimes just very boring, dull, or very, distracted experiences, but other times it would be very deep and very transcendental. And then from that place, I was kind of at peace with the world. It was like, okay, I don't like these symptoms, but my life's okay. I couldn't work. I lost my career. I could just barely take care of myself. I was on disability, but I had this whole different experience of it.
Right.
And that's
Do you
what kind of
notice?
led to me then realizing I'm not actually sick. This is in my brain and
Right.
nervous system. Because I had this very receptive mind space at this point.
Yeah. Would you say my theory is if you're regulating your nervous system, you're bringing the alarms down, that you're able to tap in easier and flow, you know, and tap in easier to your spiritual side. Did you notice a difference? Like when you're doing your meditations, were you able to tap in easier than before?
Well, for me, I think I was just meditating for these years progressively when I had all these symptoms, and it did like I think there's a cumulative effect. Your
Yeah.
brain really learns how to go into this meditative state. But I would
Yeah.
say, I don't know, that still wasn't enough to shift the symptoms. I don't think
Yeah.
like a spiritual awakening necessarily makes you healthy because I
Yeah.
still really thought there was something wrong with my body. But then when I learned this whole TMS body of work and I realized there's nothing wrong with me, there's no disease, all this stuff these doctors have been telling me is really not correct.
Yep.
Then it all clicked. So it's more than I think my mind was very open and receptive. It was kind of in that place of creativity or flow or zone. And so I kind of heard the truth much more easily when this woman
Yeah.
with CFS slash TMS told me how she recovered. I just got it. It was like, oh, this is recognizing truth. And because of
Right.
that, then my body instantly shifted into an energized state, and I started running around the
So it
block.
clicked quicker because your background was you're already in this field of, being in tune with your spiritual side. And then when you're doing the work, the physical TMS work, it was just quick for you. It's just like, oh, okay, yeah, 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 I get the puzzle. Oh, yeah, yeah, I get the puzzle. For me, the
Yeah, the
puzzle made
initial
sense when I
breakthrough
was
was
doing,
quick, but I just have
yeah,
to say, but I'll get into this later. But the initial
yeah,
breakthrough was very, very quick. But no, then I did have to work it for a long time
yeah,
because there was
okay,
still like the neural pathways and all the changes in the brain that had happened. Because we have these learned neural pathways in our brain, but the
right, yeah,
breakthrough was quick. Yeah.
yeah.
But I'm
For me,
curious what you were going to say.
it was a little. I think it was the opposite. It was I had, I thought I was spiritual, right? But I was running this survival program, so I wasn't really, I thought I was until I started working the physical side of, you know, of my recovery. And the visuals for me was really important because it's not like meditation, but you know, you're you're working your brain. You're working your brain, and you do tap into, you know, your spiritual muscle, your higher self. And I had the aha moments, the freak outs in the car where I was like, what was that? That was insane. I had crazy synchronicities all of a sudden, right? Things started to make sense. And I got there through the physical part, right? I
Yeah.
went physical first, and then I, was it kind of a
Yeah.
like,
That's really interesting. I'd be curious to hear more about like what happened to you where your kind of spiritual awareness opened.
well, for me, it was synchronicities and kind of like little nudges and um, thoughts and knowings that I'm on the right path,
Yeah.
right? It was just a lot of knowings and downloads,
Yeah.
right? The downloads where you're just, you feel something in your gut and you're like, I know what this is. I know you have answers that pop up and
Yeah.
you have no doubt there's the answer. And then later on, there's a check mark that proves I was right. This makes sense. Or you hear somebody else talk about it, or you hear a bunch of people talk about it, experts and blah blah blah. And they're like, or channelers, right? If you want to get into the woo woo stuff, right? You'd hear about channelers talking about they're tapping into um, something information, and they'll say some stuff, right? And I'm like, that's what I said in my recording the other week, and I listened to my recording. I'm like, that's exactly what I said. It's like we're all
Yeah.
tapping into the same bowl of information, right? And that more
Exactly.
synchronicities. Yeah.
Exactly. I describe it as like a field of information, a field
Yeah.
of data, which a lot of other people have described it that way. And it's like as we expand our awareness, we open to the field of information. And so then time and space isn't as relevant. And for
Right.
me, this actually started happening more and more as I went down this mind body healing journey and I became more connected to my body again. So, we also
Mhm.
receive a lot of intuition through our body, right? Our inner wisdom, our gut instinct, our heart's desires. And so, as I started reconnecting to my body, so many intuitions would come. And now I feel like it's so much more turned on because, yeah, there's that spiritual awareness, but there's also the embodied awareness because we're human and beings, and I think if we're
Right.
just one or the other, we're not going to be as integrated. Just the other day, actually, yesterday, I was supposed to be on a different podcast. I woke up first thing in the morning. I said, oh, she's going to have to reschedule. And I knew that. So I knew I had more time in the morning to myself. I was like, great. I'm like, but I'll just check email to confirm. And sure enough, she said, I'm so sorry, but I have to reschedule. And it was like, these things just come all the time. And it's like,
Yep.
that's amazing. You can perceive something before it happens. And we all have this ability, we all have intuitive ability. I think it's a matter of
Yep.
finding the portal that works for you. It could be meditation, it could be embodiment, it could be creativity.
Right.
It's lots of different ways we get into this flow state.
I think it also what I've learned in this is what I've been doing lately is cutting right to the chase and listening to my gut. When before I would hear it, I'd put the information here. I was still like, I'm still gonna do this though, right? And then it would be right. I'd be like, shit, and it'd be right over and over and over again. And it was always right. And now I'm like, if I'm, dealing with a difficult situation, like life throws curveballs, for me, there are opportunities for me to cut to the chase and trust my gut 1000%, my intuition 1000%. And it makes life so much easier and so much quicker. It's like I have this
Right?
magic wand and I can just trust, right? I can just be like, is this going to work out, blah, blah, blah. And you get this knowing, this feeling, yeah, fine. Or my pendulum, right? I still use a pendulum once in a while, right?
Yeah.
And I listen to it. What does the pendulum say? Oh, everything will work out fine. Your dog will be fine. Okay. Or whatever the situation is, right? And I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, good, fine. I'm not gonna have the what if thoughts. I'm not gonna catastrophize. I'm just gonna roll with it. And you create this, reality, you vibrate higher, and it just, you literally create this path that things will just work out in your favor. It's great.
It's amazing. You're right. It's actually so much more efficient too. Instead of like, I remember in the past, I would make all these lists like pros and cons of this approach, pros and cons of this
Yeah.
choice, you know? And
Yeah.
that's what you're kind of trained to do in school. And now it's like, yeah, I really tune into my body. I do like a somatic meditation. And I
Yeah.
just see what kind of lights up inside of me. And there's usually one choice that's like just more expansive, lighter, more excited, and another choice that's like, more contracted. And when I trust it, which I usually do, but there's times still my brain will kind of say, like, no, no, but this doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make rational
Right. Right.
sense. But when I trust it, it's always in the flow. And it's so much better than what I could have figured out if I, was trying to micromanage it. And so this is like important for people to understand for their healing, right? Is it's like you can trust your gut when you want to sign up for a program or just know how to create your own personal practice. Like what feels right to you? People will always ask, is this going to be right for me or is that going to be right for me? Well, what feels safe to our brain and nervous system is when we're connected to our whole self and we trust ourself and we listen to ourself and follow that. That's how you're going to feel safer. When you feel safer, there's less symptoms. And like you say, there's just more synchronicity and more fun.
Yeah. I was thinking about that today. I was like, when I started using these methods in my physical healing, this is when you stop using the chiropractor, you stop using the knee braces or whatever coping mechanism. Eventually, I know in the beginning you might need to use them just so that you can do the work. But eventually, when you get the methods, you get to a point where you're, recovered and you start using the methods with other things. You drop the coping mechanisms. You stop
Yeah,
going to the
yeah,
chiropractor because you know what it is, you know what's going on. And then I thought, well, I know this is all mind, body, and soul. This is like the universal law. I wonder if, you fire the chiropractor, if in the same sense, can I fire my Reiki healer, right? To get rid of my blocked chakras? Because, you'll always need her then to come back. Can you come back next month? Because I can't, that blockage is there again. But what if, you're doing the methods, you're running the right program and it takes care of itself. Like we don't have to micromanage our body,
yeah,
our neural pathways. We don't have to micromanage our gut, our biome, or our liver. It knows what to do. So
yeah,
would that work the same spiritually? Right?
yeah.
I'm thinking. I don't know, but I'm
Let's
thinking.
try it out. Let's try it out. I
I
mean,
think so.
I really agree with what you're saying though, is it's like I have that same experience where, it's funny that you actually bring up chiropractor because this is on my mind right now. So I remember, in my healing journey, even though it's MECFS, you go to everyone under the sun, and there's this chiropractor that was saying it's all subluxations, your spine's not aligned, the energy can't move up and down your spine. You've got to see me 3 times a week for, X number of months, sign on the dotted line. And I didn't, thankfully. But I do really feel for people who get taken into that because I do think maybe he was well intentioned, but it was not really addressing what was going on with me. But this is interesting because right now my neck, like something in my neck kind of went out. And this happens every so often. And this has actually happened for many, many years, well before the MECFS. And I used to just like go to the chiropractor, it would be okay. And then, a couple months later, the same thing would happen again. But I would always be thinking, how did I move? Did I do more exercise? Did I do more yoga? This time, this just happened to me. I wake up, I'm like, oh, okay, what's going on emotionally? I had this really bizarre situation yesterday morning. Actually, right, good thing that podcaster canceled because I'm walking on my local canyon trail and a man had died like on the sidewalk, and there was his family was sobbing, and it was actually a very disturbing scene. There was all these police, and I was just kind of sending him blessings, but it was this very surreal thing that happened. And anyway, it brought up a lot for me because I'm close with my mom and she's older and my father passed away. And so sure enough, and I had a busy day and I wasn't able to do a whole lot of processing. I did a little bit of meditation. Sure enough, the next morning I wake up and my neck is out. And I know what it is. It's like, okay, I need to take some time to just kind of process this. I did some writing, I did some meditating. It feels like 70% better. Occasionally, I might get one adjustment from the chiropractor just because. So here's the thing, emotional stress can create physiological changes in the body. It can actually
Oh
throw
yeah.
your neck or back out, but it's not how you moved,
Yeah.
it's the emotional stress. Occasionally, out of compassion, I'll get like one adjustment, it'll go back in, but I think the last time I went to him was like over a year ago. But my point is like our own emotional being as well as our spiritual being gets lost along the way. And that's actually what's most important.
Especially if you recovered and you feel good and you've had a year or two where you're like, oh, this is amazing, right? You forget. You forget because you don't. Your brain doesn't need to bring up the old danger survival program because you're good, you're safe, everything's fine. And then life throws you a curveball, and then symptoms come up, and thankfully they do. I'm grateful that they do because it's telling me where I'm at, right? But we
Exactly.
forget. We forget, and you have to almost think back. Oh shit, oh yeah, I'm not going to catastrophe. Even though I'm a master at this, right? After 2 years, you forget, and
You
then you're
forget,
reminded.
and you're still like a human being, right? And we still
Yeah.
go through daily emotional stresses, and they take a toll. And we need, my experiences, I need time to process them emotionally. Somatic
Yep.
work's really important to me. It just depends. For you, it might be visualization.
Yep.
I need to take walks in nature, and
Oh yeah.
and then I can just like process it and really acknowledge, yeah, I'm having this emotional experience. A part of me feels scared or discouraged right now, and that's why it's expressing as a symptom. And for me, as soon as I bring the attention back to my emotional world, the symptom typically goes away. But I'm not really
Yep.
worried either way. I'm not doing it to get rid of the symptom. I'm doing it because I'm like, oh, thank you for being a compass to remind me that I was ignoring my inner
Compass.
world,
That's
you know?
right. A
Yeah,
compass, an alarm, it's keeping you, aware, like, hey, buddy, come on. Pay attention to this. You've been too busy with this trying to get a course out or trying to blah 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 or stress with this or your tire blew or your mom blah blah blah. Right? Like, oh yeah, gotta get back to you know what? Because for me, this is a lifestyle. This is something that I do every day, and I'm gonna do it till I'm 108. But sometimes I slack a little bit, and sometimes life gets a little bit more. The dial gets a little bit more,
yeah.
and this is normal. That's okay, as long as it's within this range. I'm okay. I don't mind if it goes a little bit up. I'm okay. I'm human. I'm here to have a physical experience.
Exactly. That's what it is. I think it's like embracing all of us. I think for a long time I was living just kind of this very worldly life. And then when I got sick, quote unquote sick, now I just call it really symptomatic. And I had to get to a point where I stopped calling myself sick or seeing myself sick. But I
Right.
certainly felt very sick and I didn't have a lot of capacity. But I actually almost started going the other way where I became really involved in meditation. I got kind of involved in the spiritual community. And there were parts of it that was really beautiful. But what I realized from that is I couldn't just recover my health or even fix relationships through spiritual practice. Like we need to honor the different parts of us. We're physical beings, emotional beings, mental beings, spiritual beings. We have these different aspects to us. And as we can honor these different parts, we can be whole. And it doesn't mean that everything goes totally smoothly. It's still like a messy human existence, but it's like you can kind of invite it all in. And you're something, I don't know. My experience is something's kind of watching it with a little more humor, and a little
Oh
more
yeah.
grain of salt. It's like you
Yeah.
don't think this is all that you are. Like this
Nope.
one sensation, this one thought, this one symptom, this one circumstance. It's all moving and changing through you just as you are. And the more you can kind of ride those waves, but also keep that awareness, the more you can grow actually, and
Yeah.
also just kind of enjoy the ride of this
Yeah.
crazy life.
It's like you have to be willing to be curious about getting uncomfortable. Not just for recovery. Like I know I say get uncomfortable, that's just the norm. You gotta feel like shit. You gotta, but actually as as an opportunity to, I want to see how awkward that's gonna be. That situation. Like life situation. That's gonna be awkward. Am I gonna avoid it? No, no, I'm gonna go towards it. I'm gonna ruffle some feathers and see what feelings I'll get out of it, and what pans out. Maybe there's a message in here. Maybe something I can learn from this, right?
Oh, I like that. I want to try that out. I want to see how awkward this is going to be because I was
Yeah.
invited to speak at a conference I'm really excited about, but I'm also like scare-sighted and kind of nervous and like, oh gosh,
Yep.
and having this imposter syndrome come up. And so I'm
Yep.
going to try that. Like, oh, how awkward could this be? And how much could I just like enjoy the awkwardness?
Yeah.
That's like you kind of know you're feeling alive. You're like awkward. You're like, there's all this,
Exactly.
yeah,
It's like
energy
people purposely they
clearing.
go like I've been trying to do it. I'm too chicken, but you do the cold water therapy, right? You sit in the ice water. It's amazing. It's beautiful. But we do it on purpose, and in a way, you get some benefits from it that you didn't know were there until you go there, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then you get like these dumps of dopamine that like give you a
Yeah.
sense of euphoria. But yeah,
Yeah.
you have to try it. It's just like if I'm describing the strawberries I had for breakfast and I'm telling you, Helmet, oh, they're like tart and sweet. And there's these little, I don't know what those things are on the outside of the strawberry. But anyway, it's not the same as when you taste it. You just have to have that experience. And I think if we can hold ourselves more lightly in life and our recovery journey, we enjoy it more, but it really signals safety back to the primitive brain, which is just, I call my amygdala Miggy, and it's like 24/7 surveillance. It's scanning for danger. And if we're giving it any sign that there is danger, the only way it can communicate is through symptoms. And it'll keep communicating because it's trying to protect us. But if we're enjoying ourselves, we're experiencing spiritual growth, nature immersion, creativity, flow states, just enjoyment. Like you said, how much can you even like enjoy feeling awkward? You're sending all these
Yeah.
messages back. I'm pretty much okay. I'm not in an emergency.
Right. Exactly. And with the allowing thing, I noticed that sometimes people can use it as a weapon to get rid of. And if you're
Mm.
allowing authentically,
Yeah.
you got to fully allow it and be okay with it without looking to see if it's gone. So, you almost have to invite it to be here for another week and like and tell it, why aren't no, you know what? I want you to be here for the next month and stay here. And you weren't here yesterday. I was waiting for you. Why aren't you here? With no strings attached, right? No conditions,
Yeah.
no deals, no secret deals that if
No.
okay, if I'm allowing, I allowed, why are you still here? This is okay, I allowed for
Exactly.
a week, still here, right? Then you're not really allowing.
No, exactly. It's that whole outcome independence. I think the thing that
Yes.
really shifted for me that was helpful was just really becoming curious about the message. And I don't mean over analyzing it, but being curious, first of all, the sensations, what does this actually feel like in my body? And then what is it communicating? What does it need? Sometimes I get nothing at all, but other times it's like, you need to stand up to fear. Basically, you're cowering in fear. These doctors have told you your adrenals are shot. You've listened to them, and you need to learn to stand up to fear and say, I don't care what you're telling me. I'm taking charge of my life. And that's the message for me again and again and again. And that's actually one of the messages for most people, standing up to fear. Other times it may be setting a boundary. For some people, it's actually, oh, I need more self compassion. I keep beating myself up for having symptoms. It's not your fault. It's not my fault. So we need
Right.
to actually learn to be kind and compassionate to ourselves and just acknowledge, our struggle, but not get stuck in the story of it. So when I started getting curious and listening to the messages, it shifted the whole dynamic. It became this sort of like interesting conversation instead of just a hopeless situation.
Right. Have you been watching what Celine Dion's going through?
I've heard a little bit. What is it? Stiff
It's all
something?
mind body. It's crazy. It's
Yeah.
mind body.
What does she have exactly?
She's got stiff person syndrome. That means they don't know what the hell's wrong with her.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
She has
That's TMS.
seizures all of a sudden. Her voice cuts out. I had the same thing. My voice cut out because of stress. Because
Yeah,
it's not lubricated, right? It's not, it's in survival. It's not gonna. You're not there to sing when a liger's on your back. You're not gonna go oh, right? So it's gonna
exactly.
affect your voice, right?
Yeah.
With
Oh,
all the
yeah.
other symptoms that go with it. So
Oh,
when I saw her, just like not just her, but people that I see in public, you start to
yeah.
look at their almost like their allostatic loads. You're like, oh, I see where you're at. Okay, it's like
Oh,
you see
yeah.
where they're at. You can
Oh,
see
right away. You can see the
their
nervous
symptoms.
system regulation, right? And your nervous system knows, like, oh, they're highly sympathetic right now, or they're like in shutdown. But yeah, I think that happens so much. I wasn't following Celine Dion, but there's other people I followed, and with her, where they can't figure out what it is, and she's being like over doctored. But you know what's lacking in the medical system, I'm sure, for her, with all her money in the world and all her talent, is what is happening in your heart? What is there any stress in your life? Is there anything that's worrying you? What is, what's
Well,
on
she's
your
been through
mind?
a lot.
What's the
She's
trauma? Yeah.
she's been through, like it doesn't come from thin air, right? Like she lost her voice,
No.
and it's interesting. Her voice is that one thing, and now she can't use it properly, and that's
Mm,
crushing her, right? So,
no.
and she's with her husband died, I think, a couple of years. He was older, and she'd been through a lot of stress
Oh,
for
well,
her life,
right there, right there. I mean,
right?
that says so much, right? That's what it is. And it's like, even with all her resources and all our medical system, I mean, that was the thing that was lacking for me, is just a doctor that would say, well, have you gone through anything stressful? Has there been any trauma? Like, why did you
Yeah.
go from being this world traveling TV news reporter to not being able to leave your house? And it makes me
Yep.
sad with people like Celine Dion and other people that are just, they're not acknowledged at like the level of being a human being and the emotional world. And that the emotions are not insignificant. They are the cues for the nervous system to tell the nervous system whether we're safe or not safe. So, yeah, I mean, that's what we can learn to do for
It
ourselves.
sucks because there's so many people. Like even it sucks for me with family because
Yeah.
family doesn't want they don't want to listen to you because you're family. They just think yeah yeah yeah, right. That be frustrating, but it's also frustrating when you see so many people out there that you can help them, right? You
I
could like
know. And how
here's
do
the
you get
key.
through?
I don't want it. I don't want that. No, give me something complicated. Tell me that I'm only going to recover 60% and I need to take certain supplements and I have to go on a certain protocol. Tell me that, then I'll buy it. Here's my money, right? But if you tell them you don't need all that, okay, yeah, that's hogwash. That's, woo woo.
I know.
That's
I mean,
frustrating.
it is. It is. I know. And even people who even may be in our immediate world or even come to us, sometimes they're still not quite open to this. And I try to just look at it as like planting seeds. I had one
Yeah.
woman who took my program, and she was saying, I get it. She's like, I totally get why people go down the supplement rabbit holes and the diet rabbit holes, because it's actually easier than being with your hurt feelings, than sitting with your trauma. Like, in a way, it's easier. In a way, it's harder because you're miserable and you're stuck, but it's not really easy to just sit with the hurt parts of yourself. And I'm not saying everybody has to do that. I'm not sure how much of that you had to do, Helmet, but I had been through just some really big capital T traumas, and I really had to do that. And it wasn't easy, but I also needed like the right support. I needed to know I was on the right path by doing that. I needed some help from practitioners. And then, our system knows how to unwind those stresses and come back into homeostasis when it gets the right support, because we shift our point of view of what's happening and we get really curious about our inner world. But, we also need some help sometimes to understand what's happening.
Yeah. What would you say is maybe the three top things or the one thing that you notice with people, why they're not moving forward, why they're stuck, and why they're not recovering compared to the other. Like for me, what I've seen is people that recover, it's pretty straightforward. Even though it's a shit show, it sucks. We deal with a lot of symptoms, but and it's because some people don't like hearing it because they do the work, they learn the methods, they apply them, and they stick to it, and they don't straddle the fence. They make a commitment, they put all the research on the shelf, and they do this every day compared to others that are stuck.
Yeah.
What would you say are some of the things that you've seen in
Mhm.
people why they're stuck?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think when they just jump around from modality to modality and they keep
Yeah,
looking for more and more solutions, and really that's a way of avoiding doing that deep inner work. And, maybe they're
yeah,
not ready, but when you find something that resonates, go deeper with that. So that's really important. I think also too on a related note, like if they keep exposing themselves to people who are saying, "Oh, it's mitochondrial damage and it's viral fragments," it's like that's going to continue to scare your brain and nervous system, and that alone perpetuates the symptoms. So you have to really make a decision. I'm going to protect
yep,
myself. I'm only going to expose myself to ideas and people to the best of my ability that are supportive
yep,
for my recovery. Another huge thing is what in the TMS world we call outcome independence. I think
yeah.
maybe Alan Gordon coined that term, I'm not sure, but outcome independence where you're indifferent to the symptoms. So that's a huge one that people, and I did too, so I'm not blaming anyone, but they just get so caught up in symptom reduction being a sign of progress. And it's
Oh yeah,
not. Symptoms are
right.
not an accurate sign of progress at all on this path. It's totally nonlinear. The primitive
Yeah,
brain is like 95% of our subconscious mind. It's all kinds of mysterious things going on in there. You just have to
yeah,
keep practicing, keep showing up. And actually, when symptoms arise, you might teach us too. I say like this is the opportunity to train your brain. It's actually
right.
a great opportunity. Be happy when the symptoms arise. But
Yeah,
instead, I think so many people get discouraged. They're like, this isn't working for me. So what happens? That's an emotion, disappointment or discouragement. What I would say is go into somatic tracking, go into a meditation, go into expressive writing, be with that emotion. But what people do is they go out onto the internet. It's so
mm.
uncomfortable to sit with that. They go out and look for something else. And then they just like get stuck in more rabbit holes that scare the primitive brain.
Those Facebook groups are horrible. I've been there. I know, but and I was stuck there. I don't know how I got out. I'm grateful that I did. But they create this reality, and they're very good at it, right? Because you got smart people in there, and they got all the science, right? They got all the lab people going, yeah, well, if you blah, 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 and you point over here, and you got the T cells, right? Well, who wouldn't believe that? Who are you
Right.
going to believe? Me, a guy in a truck with two dogs? No. Are you going to believe a guy that makes $600,000 a year? Yeah, obviously,
Yeah.
right?
That has,
The
right,
the
all
brain looks
the
for
like
evidence.
labels and
Right.
yeah.
And when the brain sees the evidence of the labels, right, that the supplements and the all the protocols, that's believable,
Yeah.
of course. But it's
Yeah.
so toxic because it creates your reality of sickness. You're gonna keep being stuck.
Exactly. I know. And then when people will say, but what if it's viral titers or fragments or whatever? And I'll say, you have to make a decision for yourself of what you're going to focus on and doggedly focus on actually what makes you feel more optimistic, more hopeful, safer. If there is a cure for any of these things, which of course there's not going to be some pill, but I just tell them if there's a cure, you'll find out about it. But
Yeah.
meanwhile, don't waste another, 10, 20, 30 years scaring yourself. Because
Yep.
it's just we understand the nature of how these symptoms are created. There are now thousands of recovery stories of people recovering
Yep.
through these approaches we're talking about, using the brain and nervous system, retraining the brain, working also with the somatic body. Another thing to get back to your question, Helmet, about something I think people are missing. I think some people are able to do it with brain training and knowledge and just getting back into activities, which I think
Yep.
were pretty major for you. But I think
Hmm.
also for some people, including myself, I think including the body and the emotions are really important.
Hmm. Oh yeah.
Yeah, and just really, yeah, acknowledging the emotions that are there,
Feeling
working
the
with some of the
emotions.
past stresses and traumas,
Yep.
and being in the somatic body. And it's not to say we have to go back and revisit every trauma. It's nothing like that. It's just like being with what's present right now in my body, because
Right.
that's
I call
actually
it.
that is a form of
I tell
brain
it
retraining.
the brain bringing me the stuff on a platter. Like I'm not digging, but the brain's gonna give me what I need to work on, and that for me was enough for me to
Yeah,
recalibrate and recover. That was good enough, right? And if I
yeah,
wanted to go deeper,
yeah,
if I really want to, I'm in a better position to do it, and I can do it as more of a curious observer, and I'm not putting gas on the fire because I'm in a better position to do it, right?
Well, exactly. I mean, you have to have enough resources in and around you, I think, to go into those deeper layers. But I really believe what you said, that whatever is coming up for us now, our thoughts, our emotions, our physical sensations slash symptoms, that is our subconscious mind. That tells us where the subconscious mind is. The subconscious mind is where past traumas and stressors live. And so if you just work with it in the present moment, in a
Right.
new way, in this mindful way, in this present way, you are learning to integrate and almost like I think of assimilate past stressors as well.
Yep, sure.
Yeah.
Um, Another thing that I notice, it's like I can almost create a separate program just for this, is catching the old behavior patterns, but not just catching them once, keep catching them and changing them, like symptom talk. Oh, I feel like sighing, the sounds that we make, the oh, uh, right, all the sounds, all the yeah, but oh, you had that symptoms, nice try, I have that 24/7, and like building the case. I'm building a case to beat you in this court. I have my jury of all the panel of different lawyers. I have the OJ Simpson's glove, exhibit A, exhibit B, because I just want justice, so you know that I'm sick. I want you to know. I'd rather be, right, than I'm sick than wrong and recover. That's right.
Yeah.
Let's build up
Yeah.
that case. And like I've told people, I'm like, did you just see what you wrote or what you said there? We got to stop those old behavior. But those are the old behavior patterns. Talk about symptoms, how awful you feel, how once upon a time you were able to run 5 kilometers and now you can, and it's destroying you and it hurts. But they're like, oh yeah, I do that, don't I? I'm like, yeah, you got to catch it. Okay, I will.
Yes.
2 seconds later,
Yes.
they're talking about how horrible they feel again. Symptom talk again. I'm like, see,
Yes.
you just did it. We just talked about it. Oh, look at, and it just keeps happening. I'm like, I did this too, right?
Yeah.
I got sucked into the loop of talking about symptoms. My mom would come and ask me, so how are you feeling? Oh, here's my can of worms I'm opening up. I'm going to actually embellish and milk this. Like before my mom came over to drop off gluten-free crackers, I was sitting there doing my routine. Like, okay, I feel like shit, but I'm doing my routine. And then my mom would come like, how are you doing? I'm like, oh, it's the worst day. I don't know. I got this thing happening here. It hurts so much. I don't know. Right. And I'm building a case again. And I'm right. So I
It's
had
like
to,
it's so funny. You're like doing your routine, but then when mom comes, it's like you fall back into these old programs, and we have these
yeah.
social agreements with people almost like, okay, I play this role that I'm the sick people, and the sick person, and we fall back into that. And that's where,
Mm,
again, it takes that presence and it takes that awareness to notice I'm talking about myself like a sick person. I'm talking about
yeah.
myself like a broken person. That's why for me, it helped to shift from symptoms. I stopped using diseases. I mean, now I'll talk about ME/CFS if I just need to communicate to you what I was diagnosed with. But,
Yeah.
then I shifted into symptoms, but then I just shifted into they're just sensations. That's really all they are.
Yeah.
And
The
then they're
labels don't mean
actually even
anything.
further, they're just emotions. And then they're
Right.
really just like energy. And then they're just consciousness. And you kind of go into the more subtle awareness and you're no longer stuck in your identity. But that's what it is. People, and I get it. Like I get becoming identified with this because it's like your whole world. I mean, it was for you, I know. For me, I mean,
Yeah.
I was in my house all day in my four walls. Like that's kind of all I could do. And you also want to have something to talk about, so when someone asked me what I could talk about, I couldn't talk about work. I couldn't really talk about a social life. Like I mean, that's all I could talk about. So I felt like then that gave me a sense of meaning. But it's like you want to catch that. Like, is that the kind of meaning you want to create about yourself? Or do you want to
Right.
create a different kind of meaning? Which is also something that we were going to talk a little bit about is just
Yeah.
finding play, pleasure, peace, purpose, finding some of the lighter aspects of your existence. You could, even if you have symptoms, right? I started becoming kind of enamored with nature and Eckhart Tolle and poetry, but it could be something totally different for you. There's this
Yeah.
woman that wrote a book. She had really debilitating CFS, and she wrote a book on what is it? Something like the sound of a snail eating, but she became fascinated with this wild snail she had in a terrarium. And she would just study this snail night and day and learn its patterns. And she just became intrigued and she couldn't move very much. So a lot of times
Right.
people say like, oh, but I can't do that much. But it's not really about that. It's about shifting your mind to something more interesting and engaging than these symptoms or this sickness, you know?
If you see, like, I've had people, they say, but I can't do that. Yeah, well, nice try. I'm in bed. I'm like bedridden. I like, you don't understand. Like, I'm crashing. And when you, I don't think you understand. Like, when people get to that level, I tell them, well, you know what I've noticed? I see you in all the groups. I see you typing with all the people. You're busy going all day. You're, building your case all day. You're able to do that and put so much effort into it and talking about symptoms. And that alone is exhausting. If you can do that all day, and send voice notes about your how horrible you feel, then you can do the work.
Yeah, right. I mean, that takes a lot of energy. That takes a lot of energy. They're just
More,
in the
more
habit.
energy.
It's
Yeah,
just it's in the habit. And it's like the brain doesn't like change. It likes, I think there's something like the brain prefers like a familiar hell to an unfamiliar heaven,
yeah, for
And so
sure.
it's like you've got to interrupt that, or
Yep.
the invitation is to interrupt that if you really want to shift these symptoms. And more than that, it's just about enjoying your life again, right? Because
Yeah.
you could probably think back to times you had good health and you still weren't enjoying your life. I can think
No.
of plenty
Yeah.
of times like that.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not like the health is the thing that's going to bring you happiness. It's learning to shift the way we think,
The
feel, and
program.
act and open to
Yeah.
something greater, like we're talking about, that can bring us into this state of peace and these inner qualities that I believe really are intrinsic to us: love, peace, joy, calm.
Deliciousness of life.
Yeah, it's
Before,
like juicy life.
yeah, before everything tasted like stale bread, right? When I didn't
Which you
have my
couldn't even
70
eat. You
symptoms
couldn't
yet.
even eat stale bread.
Right. Yeah. Before that, like,
Yeah.
I think that all this stuff happened to me to shake me up. It's like the dark night of the soul. It was a big shake up to wake up so I'm not wasting life being
Yeah.
miserable and angry all the time and going to work and being miserable, coming home, rotting in front of the TV, going to bed, do that again every day. Like when I went to the beach, I felt like 2 out of 10 happy. Right now, if I go to the store, corner store, it's the most magical thing in the world. Right? It's like everything's delicious, right? Even the worst food from the worst Chinese places, it sucks. But I enjoy life more, right?
Yeah.
It's an awakening. It's like you really appreciate little things when before you just like, and you weren't even aware how miserable how miserable I was anyway.
Do you think, Helmet, for you, did this happen like gradually with all this training and practicing you were doing that just shifted your whole brain state? Or how did this kind of more appreciation and gratitude open up for you?
I think it was a gradual thing because
Okay.
throughout life, it gave me curveballs. I had, chronic symptoms here and there, maybe five, maybe 10, right?
Mhm.
But I didn't do anything about it because the fear wasn't driving the fire up my ass. I was
Yeah.
lazy about it. It's like, yeah, I'll do that. Maybe this and that. I'll eventually do that, whatever. And I was back to my lazy, miserable, angry self.
Yeah.
But having the 70 and living an exorcism every day nightmare forced me to make the change and having it like a carrot, in front of me, keep me in that fear
Mhm.
kept me on the path, not giving up after 6 months or 12
Yeah.
months or right. It kept me. That's why it's great that when the symptoms keep coming back, right? Even the 2.5 year part, I was still having crazy spikes where I'm like, what's this is I think I'm worse now at 2.5 years than I was when I first started, right?
Yeah.
But it was good that it was like that. So it kept me going. And it was gradual, but it had to be gradual and it had to keep me on the path because, you know, if I wasn't on the path, I wouldn't have moved forward. I would have been, just gave up and been lazy. And so the fear, harnessing that fear was really important. And I'm grateful for the fear because that's what kept me on the
Yeah.
path.
I really love that. It's like you really hit rock bottom to the point where there was like you couldn't go down anymore. It was so
Right.
excruciating. So it kept you on this path. And then do you feel that you basically like rewired your brain for gratitude by turning your attention to more positive visualizations and activities again and again?
Yeah, it's like hardwiring happiness.
Hmm.
Like that was one of my goals. I said I had that in my I used to have this little speech, intro speech that I would have, right? Because that's what DNRS teaches you. But then I made my own up. I'm like, I want to become Ned Flanders, right? In the next 5 years, I'm gonna become Ned Flanders. So because my goal was to literally hardwire myself happy to a happy program and almost have intrusive happy thoughts instead of intrusive horrible thoughts, right?
Well,
And
that
almost
was
be
actually
annoyed with
your
them.
goal.
Right. Yeah, it was. That's why I said I'm gonna keep going. I don't want to just recover because I was so scared of being that miserable guy that I used to be
Yeah. Yeah.
that I wanted to go extreme and see what I can become. And I'm still actually, you know what? I'm still working on that. Sure, I'm recovered. I don't have symptoms anymore. Life still throws me curveballs. This is something where it takes time to go deeper and deeper. And I'm getting in touch with my spiritual self. I could just imagine where I'm going to be in 5 years, right? So it's like a slow pace, but I'm enjoying it and getting more nuggets when I'm going slow. I'm understanding, I'm sifting through them a
Yes.
little bit more, right?
I can totally relate to that. And it's kind of
Yeah,
a luxury that you've earned that because
right.
you've done the work when you were just like in the cauldron, you were totally in the fire. And so
Yeah,
now you're not in it anymore. And so there's more luxury to go slow. But I know I can relate to what you're saying because sometimes people will say to me, like, oh, but do you still have to do those practices? I'm like, I don't have to, but why wouldn't I want to? Like someone gave me the
right,
key to life. I've
right.
discovered this incredible like chest of gold I was sitting on my whole life, except it's really inside me. Why
Yeah,
wouldn't I want to keep looking at that every day? Work with my thoughts, work with emotions, embodiment, somatics, open to guidance from something so much greater than me, move with life, nature, source, whatever you want to call it. Like, why
yeah.
wouldn't I? Because
I
it's
call
like
it
you
source too.
open to the, yeah, source.
Yeah,
It's
I call it God source.
God
GS.
source. You can't really,
Yeah,
beat that. It
yeah,
really is. And so it's like, yeah, when you're tapping into what it is that's giving life to all of us, not just us as like separate people. Yeah, it seems like I'm a separate person, you're a separate person, but there's something uniting us. There's something greater. People use different words to describe it. Sometimes I use
yeah,
awareness, consciousness, love, peace, God. And when you can tap into that and start moving with and as that, I mean, it's endless. The potential is endless. Like every day becomes a new exploration. You don't know
right.
what kind of
Exploring.
synchronicities or serendipities will arise. And it's not like I'm sugarcoating it. There's still challenges. There's still things that
Right.
come up with like, oh, this is really hard. But then I honor that, like my human self, and I just give myself compassion, like the human scared part of me suffering. And I'm just going to kind of hold myself in that. Um, and then I can move on, because I'm acknowledging this whole range of experience.
Yeah, it becomes exciting because it's like for most of my life, you're surrounding this alarm orb. I mentioned this a couple times in my group coaching. And this alarm orb, when you have an alarm that you're it's always there, it changes your core beliefs and your reality in a way. And then when you
Yeah,
recalibrate,
yeah,
right, and that orb is gone,
yeah.
it's like you're reborn, and it's like, well, what do I do? Well, oh, this is exciting now. Oh, I can explore life. It's like a totally different reality, right? When before,
Exactly. The core beliefs are so pivotal. I've been actually working with core beliefs and limiting beliefs again in kind of a new way lately, more with myself and sometimes with clients. Because I mean, it's amazing how deep the rabbit hole goes and how subtle and pervasive some of those limiting beliefs could be. Like for a long time, it was like, oh, I'm a sick person. And then I realized I'm not sick. I'm not a sick person. I'm not broken. And I've recovered from the symptoms. But then I realized, wow, there's still some like subtle beliefs that, but like I am wounded. I'm wounded emotionally. So I'm,
Yeah.
not going to be able to thrive in relationships. I'm not thinking this stuff consciously. I'm not going around saying this.
Right.
But as
Right.
I do writing, as I do meditating, as I start looking at, I'm acting in a certain way over and over. So what beliefs are behind that? And then I find more subtle layers of it. And I don't know, for me, I think just kind of not turning it around like you're saying, but just kind of really asking, is this supportive? Does this ring true in me? No, it drags me down, it makes me feel heavy. What feels like actually a core value, like a true supportive belief for me? And it's something else, and it's not necessarily the opposite. It's something else. Like, yeah, I've been through pain in my life, but I've actually overcome it, and that makes me have more to offer, in relationships or whatever it is. But it has to be something that rings true in me, and I'll feel it in my body. I'll feel more energized, I'll feel more open. And then that becomes the brain training. It's like, okay, now I'm just catching when I think the old thought and just start living this new belief, acting like it's true, repeating it to myself, and then you train that new reality.
Yeah. Then you expose yourself to it, get uncomfortable, get uncomfortable over and over and over again until it means nothing anymore. And then it's like you move it up in the video game. It got another achievement, a 10-point achievement, because it's like, oh, that alarm's gone now. So what? This is going to change me now. You kind of become a different person. Like the old self kind of dies, and you become this
Yeah.
interesting new person that you're painting, you're creating.
Yeah. I like
It's
that.
weird.
You're painting yourself in real time. You're right. And
Yeah.
then even like we do with our recovery, you expose yourself to these new social situations where that old belief is going to come up and it's going to be like, oh, I'm too wounded to feel comfortable in social settings or whatever it is, or I'm awkward in social settings. I'm not, what I say isn't as valuable as someone else. And then it comes up because now you're pressed, you're back in the cauldron, right? And then it's where it can get interesting, like, oh, it's so interesting to see this coming up and I'm getting awkward again. And no, but I'm gonna do this anyway. And to me, that
Yes.
is like the most empowering thing. Like I'm doing it anyway. Fear can come along. Sometimes people will say, well, like, how do I get rid of fear for good? Well, please, I would hate to see what your life would be like if you got rid of fear for good, because fear
Right.
is a very loyal companion for a reason. It saves our life. But when we don't need a fear about, say, a social situation, you bring it along for the ride. Elizabeth Gilbert talks about that. Like fear can be in the back seat. It's just not going to be driving. It's not going to be steering the wheel. Fear
Right.
can be there, but you expose yourself, you do it anyway. And then it's like you start forming a new reality. Like, oh, I can do all these things and it's okay. Like the world didn't end. I didn't die. People didn't tomato me. I did feel awkward, but I did it. And then the next time I felt a little less awkward,
Right.
and the next time
Eventually.
maybe it was kind
Yeah.
of fun.
Right. It's like also when you start to take action on certain things, the universe is funny. It gives you more opportunities of that situation over and over and over again. It's like, oh,
Yeah, right.
right. Like some people they mention that they have problems with movement,
Mhm.
and they find it funny that their car is parked down the street and they has to get to their car to do what they're supposed to do to stick to the routine. I'm like, that's the universe giving you an opportunity to go walk there to your car
Yeah.
to do the thing that
Yeah.
you got to do. And it does
Yeah.
that. It's interesting.
It does again and again and again. Well, and it's also
Yeah.
that kind of what you resist persists. Like if you're pushing against something, like I can't walk to the car, it's like it keeps drawing it to you, but it's also an opportunity to move through it.
Yeah, for sure. Um,
Yeah.
and then the OCD in relationship, because you mentioned relationships,
Yeah.
and then you're aware because I had OCD, looping OCD thoughts. I'm like, you know what? I've had this kind of throughout my life, and it was tainting a lot of relationships, and it was ruining my confidence,
Yeah.
and it was it's like an alarm going off, right? And it's interesting how now that I worked with other things on my OCD with other things, I use those same methods with the ROCD. Sure, I'm blessed to have a great wife and someone who's supportive, but there's still some old beliefs that I've brought over for the years of curveballs of past relationships.
Yeah.
And now I can open them up, expose myself to them, get really uncomfortable. The alarms go wild, right? And with repetition, eventually it goes from uncomfortableness to meh. And then when you get there, you're like, wow, that's powerful.
And
You become powerful. It's insane.
that's really beautiful what you're describing too, to be able to do that with someone who loves you, who you love,
Yep.
who's a safe person. And then when you can expose yourself like that with these old programs running, then that really rewires your brain to like, oh no, I'm in a different relationship now. I'm a different person. I can be myself. I can be loved. And yeah, and I think that that's the thing. Even if you don't have symptoms, these patterns are going to show up other ways in your life. Other people have relationship problems. Some people have addictions. Some
Yep.
people are perpetually broke. People who are listening to your channel, they tend to
Yep.
be somaticizers, right? It turns into symptoms in the body. But as we work with these patterns, the beauty is it makes shifts in all these different areas of our life. You know,
Right. It would be good.
relationships.
It would be nice if we had the opportunity to implement what we know now and go back into our past and have that courage to go to say no to somebody and go, why am I with you? Why am I still with you for 4 years? Why am I with this narcissist? Why am I with, right? And have the strength to go to say no and walk away and feel like having all the power and watching them squirm for once, right?
Oh my
That would
gosh,
be
I
nice.
know. I've like thought that so many times, like, oh my gosh, if I could go back. But also you can kind of do it in your imagination, right? And then I
Yep.
think whenever I'm thinking that, like if I could only go back and do that for me, I realize I'm actually avoiding doing it right now in my life with someone. I'll be
Yeah,
like,
that's true.
oh, if I could only go back and like set a boundary with that person, it's usually that I'm like not actually doing it right now. And I'm trying to like rewrite the past. And I try to remind myself, okay, I can do it now. I can move forward now. I mean, we got to go into the challenge zone, and that's not necessarily easy.
Yeah.
Like I work with the model of like we have the safe zone, everything's like safe and okay, but it's boring, we don't learn and grow. Then we move out into
Right.
the challenge zone. That's uncomfortable, it's awkward, it can also be exciting and energizing and juicy. It's where we rewire the brain, right? It's where we learn new
Yep.
skills. However, then if we go into the overwhelm zone, which is kind of the third concentric circle, then our brain closes to learning and growing and healing. So we kind of need to come back to safety and just recharge, regroup, and then we go back into challenge. So no matter what we're doing, whether we're recovering, we're working with relationships, we're growing an online business, which is another
Yep.
one. I use these principles in my online business, as I'm sure you are
Right.
too. And it's a
Yep.
relationship too. And there's
Uh,
challenges. But
well,
it's
I'm just
like,
learning this now. I'm just learning to go. I'm overthinking everything. I'm like, should I go Kajabi or should I do Teachable or should I? Right? It's like,
oh, I know. I went through all that and I landed on Thinkific, by the way. Um,
yeah.
but yeah, I know. And then you then you like tune into your gut and you're like, okay,
Mhm.
just gonna do it. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's okay. And also I think a lot of it is just learning to be comfortable with discomfort.
Yep.
That's just the nature of reality in a human body. There's going to be some discomfort, and
Yep.
that's okay. And it's really like a skill you cultivate. I think for me, that was one of the main skills I cultivated in my recovery, learning to be
Yep.
comfortable with discomfort. And at first, it was just like these really intense sensations inside my whole body and brain. And as I could be uncomfortable with that, eventually they started turning down. But then I can definitely be uncomfortable with, you know, feeling awkward at a party or something.
Uh, I call it get discomfortable in a way. So that's the word.
Discomfortable.
Yeah.
I like
Um.
it.
So you mentioned the other. That I have this lately. Imposter syndrome. It's
Mm,
like because I've recovered, my brain leaves it alone, and I have to. I when I do a video, sometimes I have to sit and go back in time and relive and refind
mm,
the horrible things, and then I'd be like, oh, I forgot to talk about that. Oh, that was nasty. And I don't over research it. I just quickly record and I relive it, right? Relive it. But
mm.
with this imposter thing, it's like am I qualified to be talking about how horrible, like, did I really have 70 symptoms? Did I? Then one day I counted them, like I had way more than 70, right? But I don't say I had blah, 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 because then people, they throw you out, right? Everything you say is discrediting. So I try to keep it so it's more, you can digest it, right?
Yeah,
So that
I
you,
like that. Just
right?
summing up the number of symptoms. I mean, that tells you everything. That's massive. And you don't have to go through the laundry list. But
Right.
yeah, it's like, it's funny. I think at first, I don't know if this is what's happening with you. I think at first, when I started speaking out, I was so passionate because it's like I had to tell people. I mean, I wasn't
Yep.
just evangelizing on the street. I was telling people who wanted to listen, and I started taking free clients in the beginning and just working
Yep.
with people and seeing if this worked. And I just felt like I can't go back to journalism. I've got to share this. This is just
Yeah.
such gold. Um, but yeah, then after a while, it's like, oh, there's so many other people out there, and there's psychologists and there's doctors. And I mean, do I
Yep.
deserve to be doing this, or am I qualified? But again, it's like using the same concepts we're talking about. I just keep moving through the fear and moving into what energizes me. And I still find it's energizing, it's lively, it's fulfilling to share this knowledge, to lead people into their emotional world. And the thing that's amazing is you get these reflections back that people have their own breakthroughs and their own discoveries. And it's like, wow, this isn't me doing it or you doing it. It's really, we're like sharing this, and it ignites something in someone else, and then they're in
Right.
their own process. And so I
Yep.
also try to take that out. One thing that's helped me is I try to use this outcome independence with clients and students. Like I say, I'm outcome independent to their results. I wish for them the very best. I see them as healed and whole. I don't even see them as sick. When I'm working with
Yep.
someone, there's nothing wrong with them. But I also sort of take out that gripping onto their symptoms going away or not, because then that just feeds into that energetic pattern for them. And just
That's
it
true.
allows me
I
to just kind of be with them as
I
another
have to
human
remind
being.
myself of that because I get so consumed by, people that I work with that I still think about them, a couple of days later. I'm like, are they doing the work? Did they get, maybe I should, right? I get too wrapped up in it. And then I had to learn to, you did your best. You gave them what they need to know. It's up to them now to do the work.
Mhm.
And you got to move on to what you want to do, right? Sometimes I hold on to
Yeah.
some people, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, I know. I feel like I'm like so immersed in the work and just thinking about different people and how they're doing. I know. I mean, because I do care, and because you do care. And
Yeah.
everyone is on their own journey too, right? And so we plant the seeds, and they sprout in the way they're meant to in their own time. And I also try to remember, like, I love that you have all these mountains behind you. Like, there's different paths up the mountains. And I
Yep.
actually, like, I'm a little
I got a
bit of a,
little sun there.
ooh,
It's
I
the
want to be
lamp. It's a
there,
little lamp. Yeah.
that sweet spot.
Yeah.
The light in the center. And it's
Yeah.
like, I mean, I so believe in what helped me, and so now what I share in this mind body approach, that sometimes I can kind of be like, oh, this is the way. But I try to
Yeah.
remember we all have a different way. Like there are different paths up the mountain. And sometimes someone just gets one nugget, from this conversation, and another nugget from somewhere else. But like we talked about at the beginning, you have to be careful to be discerning and see how it feels inside of you, rather than just grasping at straws like, oh, they did this, I better try this. They did that, I'll try that.
Right.
Really see how it feels inside of you. Does it make you feel more hopeful, supportive, safe? Does it resonate with you? If it does, you're going to feel safer. It's also your intuition talking to you, and it's more likely to have the intended effect.
Yeah. In the beginning, sure, I was, pivoting, switching, trying this, you know, but eventually when I did find what made sense, I only stuck with that. And also along the way, you fall on your face, you experiment, and you find what works for you. And then you don't need any program because you are your own program because
Yeah.
you experience stuff by trial and error. There's
Yeah.
your answer. There you go. Right. A couple of points here and there. That's great. And
Yeah.
doing it every day and staying on the path and not giving up. That's huge.
Yeah.
And being aware of all behavior patterns and doing my visuals and going for walks, like that's all massive.
Yeah.
But yeah, sticking to it, and it's altogether was really important for me, for sure, to
Yeah.
keep going and don't give up, and don't do 10, 20 different modalities, because then you'll know it inside out. They'll tell you everything that about your program or that program, or they know it better than them.
Yeah.
But are they sticking to one thing? No, right? Not really.
Yeah,
And that's what
exactly.
gets
And I
people
think
stuck.
it's
Yeah.
like when we start to feel fear and doubt creep in, when symptoms creep in, that's again when we're like vulnerable to just jump and frantically scroll the internet and try to find some outer solution. But to me, it's like, really, yeah, come back to yourself, come back to your center, find how you do that. Like, what is that on a walk? Is that sitting meditation? And find what that is when you're starting to scan or scroll or feel desperate. Really do whatever you can to come back to your center, because that's what's going to really guide you, right?
Sure. And for me, it was listening to my gut and just going with that, and I
Yeah.
had to learn to not listen to my gut and have it prove me wrong, so that I would finally go, okay, okay, I'm going to start listening to you. So I'm
Right.
going to
There's
keep
trial
doing
and
that.
error, right? And so
Yeah.
like then even the so-called mistakes have value, because you learn, oh yeah, I didn't listen to my gut, didn't listen to my heart, and looked like that didn't work out so well. And it
Right.
happens every single time. And so now I almost always listen. Occasionally I don't. And I'm like, oh yeah.
Mhm.
I was like, my brain kind of got in the way. But yeah, it's so cool because it's like we're built in with this inner compass, and we
Yeah.
have this guidance system inside of us, and it's just like really learning to tune into that. And yes, like you and I needed some basic education and knowledge to know, okay,
Yeah.
it's not the mitochondria, it's not the
Correct.
food allergies, right? Like it's actually the brain and nervous system. So you just some basic knowledge and understanding of these models. And then it's really about like finding what lights you up, finding what makes you feel safe, finding what helps retrain your brain into healthier, happier states of being. And also, I would say more authentic. For me, it was also more authentic. I couldn't just put on a happy face. I really needed, that's why I think something like DNRS would not have worked for me. And I see a lot of people come into my work through that, and they couldn't just put on a happy face because like we're complex beings, and if we're not afraid of sadness or anger or other emotions, and we know how to express them in a healthy way, we can honor our whole state and our whole being, and then we kind of end up resetting back into joy and back into peace. But
Yeah.
you can't really do that if you're like bypassing all the pain and you're ignoring it and you're pushing
Right.
it down again and again.
Right. Yeah. That doesn't make any sense. And at the time, I didn't know. Right. But I
Yeah,
had to
me too.
do the wrong things to, find out what the right things are. It's like that's how the contrast works. You go into the dark and you find out what you do like, right?
Yeah,
By doing the things you don't like, that don't work.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I know.
Yeah. Perfect.
Oh, well, this
Uh,
was fun
yeah.
2.0. Thanks for
Well,
having me back.
I'm sure we got next time I got a lot more stuff that we can tackle.
I
I'm sure you
know.
got
I have some
a
notes
bunch
here. I'm
more.
not even sure how many we talked about,
Yeah.
but it was fun.
Yeah, it was great. So yeah, we'll hit this off again, maybe in the fall or in the near Christmas time. We'll do round 3 if you're interested.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Awesome. I'm
3.0.
excited. All right. Well,
Oh,
thank you for coming here, and I had a good time. That was awesome.
thanks for having me back. It was great to see you.
Same here. All right. Bye.
Bye.